Hi, everyone. This is Caroline from Fiat Integrative Health in Franklin, Tennessee, and you're listening to the Fiat Health Podcast. We believe that now more than ever, the healthcare industry has become a place of confusion. And over the years, we have been asked countless questions about what true health and integration for the whole person looks like. Join us every other week as we explore topics ranging from primary care and women's health to counseling and spiritual health. We're so glad you're here.
Welcome to Fiat. This is our podcast number, I think, episode 42, maybe 41 and a half.
Yep, might be wrong, but it's okay.
Let us know in the comments. Today, I am Ed Glynn. I am a physician here at Fiat, and I'm with Ashlynn.
Yes, hello. Hi, everybody.
And today we're going to cover a very fun yet controversial topic, and that is navigating nutrition in 2026. We want to cover why it's so controversial, and we also want to cover some of the latest research, and ultimately we want to leave you with some practical tips as well as some recipes. So hopefully somebody will grab a little bit of everything from this. But before we begin, I thought it would be interesting if we introduced what's on our supplement shelf. So Ashlynn and I are going to each introduce something that is near and dear to our heart every morning and perhaps every morning and night. And I'll hand this to you, Ashlynn. What's on your shelf?
Well, today I chose CoQ10. I love CoQ10, but I think people don't quite understand the scope that CoQ10 can have and the type of CoQ10 you should be taking, etc. So CoQ10 is naturally made in your body. It's a powerful antioxidant. And its main function is to help your mitochondria produce ATP. I think we all remember this from 6th grade biology. I think that's the one thing that sticks with people, right?
Adenosine triphosphate and the Krebs
mitochondria
cycle.
is the powerhouse of the cell. No one will ever forget that. So that's the energy our bodies run on. Essentially, mitochondria is the core function of your cell. When you have dysfunctional mitochondria, you have dysfunctional cells, and so on and so forth. So CoQ10 primarily protects cells from inflammation, oxidative stress, things like that. So your body should be producing it on its own, but levels can decline with age, illness, poor metabolic health, oxidative stress, inflammation, the foods that you eat, as we're talking about today. So benefits of supplementing with CoQ10, first and foremost, what most people are familiar with is cardiovascular health, helps support the endothelial lining of your heart. The heart is reliant on mitochondria. It's the most dense area of mitochondria in your body. Research suggests that it helps with energy efficiency, reduction in oxidative stress, and cardiovascular disease, primarily reducing that inflammation in the vessels of your heart, preventing CV disease, and some studies say it can help support a healthy blood pressure, things like that. Brain health, this is a big one that I use in education, especially in patients who are at risk for developing diseases such as Alzheimer's and dementia. CoQ10 can help with neuroprotection. It can also help with migraines. So if people struggle from migraines, we have to consider a CoQ10 deficiency. It can also be really helpful in mitochondrial dysfunction-related autism. So CoQ10 can be helpful in individuals with autistic disorders as well. And then another favorite is in fertility. Another favorite use is for fertility in women. It can help support ovarian health, egg health, and help with ovarian reserve as women age. And then in men, it can increase sperm motility and decrease oxidative stress in sperm counts. So I think it's really interesting. It's important to recognize there's two different types of CoQ10. There's ubiquinone and ubiquinol. Ubiquinone is oxidized, usually very poorly absorbed. These are usually the CoQ10s that you're going to get at the grocery store. So read your labels is my point in saying that. Ubiquinol is the active antioxidant form. Absorption is much more efficient. Other things to think about when choosing your CoQ10 supplement, they're fat soluble. So if you're getting a CoQ10 that's a tablet, chalky tablet, your body's not going to absorb that very well, if at all. It needs to be in a fat carrier or an oil carrier. So it's usually in a capsule, a soft gel form. So look for that. Dosing differs depending on what we're using it for. So that's a conversation to have with your provider, usually 100 to 400 milligrams. And research says it's generally safe to take daily, but there's some emerging opinions out there on the benefits of cycling CoQ10. So the idea is that continuous supplementation can cause cells to downregulate endogenous production of ATP or energy, right? So your cells don't need to work as hard to do their core function because they're relying on supplementation for that. So cycling periods can encourage the body to continue maintaining its own CoQ10 production. There's no magic formula to cycling. It's still kind of an ongoing conversation. 60 days on, few days off, 8 weeks on, 2 weeks off. The jury's out on that. But CoQ10 overall can benefit most people. There's not a lot of contraindications to it. Obviously, a conversation to have with your provider, but that's one of many things on my supplement shelf. Some would be overwhelmed if you opened my cabinet.
That's awesome. I love when we identify a supplement that is naturally found in the body. Those are the ones that normally the laundry list seems even unbelievable of what it does. But no, it truly touches all of these things. And that's because the body was made that way.
Yeah.
And creating that supplement, why do we have to take supplements? I think of it the way we look at minerals and vitamins on our vegetables compared to 20 years ago, 60 years ago, and even 80 years ago. We're down up to 80% on certain minerals like magnesium in our vegetables. So we've really worn out our food industry, or our food industry has really worn out our vegetables and fruits. And so that's probably why we're having to supplement these things. So on my shelf, one of my 107 supplements, but the one I swear by is NAC, or N-acetylcysteine. I take 600 milligrams twice a day. 600 milligrams daily has been used and actually studied in behavioral medicine. It's known to do two things in the brain, both of which have to do with glutamates and glutathione. Glutamates, you want to decrease effectiveness of glutamates. What this does is help stabilize the mood, stops the peaks up and down, and that's what NAC does in the brain. It also boosts glutathione, and this is a stabilizer, an enhancer for mood, so specifically dealing with serotonin in the brain. And so anybody who's on a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, this is a good way to give it an extra boost. But even for all of us, we have serotonin in our brain, a ton more in our gut, but we have a lot in our brain. And NAC is known to affect that through the glutathione and glutamate pathways. The second thing, and actually more important reason why I take it, came from a study in 1997 where they studied NAC 600 milligrams twice a day during a flu pandemic. And what they realized was it did not decrease the flu actually being passed. So there was not a decrease in transmission, but there was a significant decrease in the length of the flu as well as the symptom severity. And so my wife works in the public school system. I'm here at Fiat on the front lines. I would love to be able to catch the viruses, but not feel the viruses. And so that's why I take my NAC twice a day. Started November 9th last year. I remember the exact day. Got my big full scripts package in the mail, and I don't miss a dose.
Love it.
All right. Well, that is our supplemental shelf. Let's dive into the main part of our podcast, navigating nutrients. This is going to be a fun talk. If any of you ever tried some of those far out recommended dietary changes like keto, or quote unquote low carb or dirty keto, or God forbid, carnivore. There are so many schools of thought, or perhaps even almost similar to denominations on where you fall in these lines. And then, of course, there's our professional nutritionists. And yet, even in the professional nutritionists, there are so many schools of thought. And so you would expect a physician who has had, at a minimum, 7 years of training before they're seeing patients would have wonderful training on nutrition. And I will tell you, up until and including today, no, we don't. There's approximately 20 hours in med school spread over 4 years, and it is something to quote unquote get through. And then in residency, it is only addressed if you choose to do it as an elective. And then again, when you do those electives, it also depends on which school you go to for your elective. So we'll touch on why it's a spicy topic, and we'll kind of dive deeper specifically around the pyramid. And I think this is going to be a fun discussion.
I think so too. And, I would say that nursing education is the same. So not a shame on medical school, but also nursing school. I remember I took one nutrition class my freshman year, and yes, it was, what did you put for that?
Yes.
Are you getting through this?
And why is that? It's an interesting dichotomy in allopathic medicine. So what is allopathic medicine? If you think of an MD or a DO, their focus is on medications, surgeries, and therapies. And when we talk about therapies, we're not talking about many of the modern day therapies. We're talking more or less therapies that you would get from a specialist. And that's the focus of allopathic medicine, nothing to do with nutrients and, God forbid, supplements as well. And that's been the focus forever. But more importantly, since the 30s and deep into the 50s, nutrition was thought of as nothing to do with health and more to do with just getting enough energy to get through the day. But now with all the emerging evidence we have, we know that nutrition is probably the foundation. That and activity are the foundations of health. And that's why we think it's most important to start talking about. But then again, there's so much noise out there. I do want to start with the pyramid. And there's all kinds of thoughts and discussions. And some would say it's not conspiracy. It's factual that the original pyramid that had, the bottom of the pyramid, which is the largest amount, it had the carbohydrates, and the top was the fats, and everything was low fat this and low fat that, and didn't take into account that low fat and high carb leads to a full entire 2 generations of obesity. And that's kind of where that pyramid went wrong. It was thought that it was influenced by a lot of the food manufacturers. Very well could have. But now there was the new pyramid was introduced, and it is the upside down pyramid that comes from RFK Jr. and his team. And I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. And I also like how they got rid of the actual lines in it, and they just kind of put the food around, because there's no clear cut between how much better is your ground beef from perhaps avocado oil, but they're merged and there are benefits from both because both have fats in them, both have nutrients, etc. But the bottom line is the bulk of your food should be your proteins and your fruits and proteins and vegetables. And then you want your good fats and your legumes and your nuts, and then your fruits. And then at the bottom of that pyramid is your whole grains. Now, Wonder Bread is not a whole grain.
Right. I think I remember, you remember on the original food pyramid, the baguette,
Yes.
the beautiful little baguette on the bottom, and the thing of Wonder
Yes.
Bread. Yeah. And there.
So
yeah.
what is a whole grain? Well, to be a whole wheat or whole grain by the FDA standards, you have to have the 3 layers that are in there. You have the bran, you have the germ, and then the endosperm. Well, processed flour, which is not whole wheat or whole grain, is just that endoderm, which is basically pure carbohydrate, but it misses the 2 other fundamental layers, and the bran is the fiber, and then that germ is where all the nutrients are. And so all of our white breads and many of our white tortillas or our flour tortillas all wipe out the bran and wipe out that germ layer. And that's why in this pyramid, the only thing that's put on there, and in fact, it's spelled out, is whole grains. And that's what whole grains are. But right in the middle is our fats and the good fats, like avocado and avocado oils, and all of the idea that fat is not harmful and low fat is not the beneficial way. But then it brings into this question lots of controversy around seed oils. And why are seed oils bad? And the evidence will show that by themselves, seed oils are not bad. In fact, they're very helpful for creating natural ways of preserving foods. And they also are good to cook with on a certain low temperature. They do have a smoke point around 400. And so it's not that you want to keep your temperature below 400. You want to keep your temperature below 350 at the max, because you're going to have hot spots. And when you're cooking with seed oils, or when they're cooking and making processed foods with these seed oils, anything near and above that smoke point introduces lots of oxidative particles that cause the inflammation and the autoimmune reactions that many people have from these seed oils. So truly, it's around cooking with these seed oils. That's the first thing. The second thing is that preservative aspect. By itself, it's not the seed oils that are bad that you find in many of these nice pastries that are found in gas stations. That coconut oil in there is a way of preserving all of the processed food particles. Maybe we should just call them all of the man-made particles. They're not really food. So truly, why are the seed oils bad? It's the oxidative stress created by cooking too high on them. And then the second thing is they simply are found in combination with the nasty processed food. So the way I look at the pyramid, and I think it's a great step forward. It's not the end. The end story hasn't been reached there. But let's drive in and I have a lot of families that will come in and they'll say, oh, we eat very whole and very clean. What does whole and clean really mean, Ashlynn?
It's a good question. What does whole food really mean, right? I mean, to an extent, most of the foods we eat are processed, right? To some extent, there's a whole nutrition term, but whole foods, when we're talking about whole foods, what do we mean? What's important when it comes to whole foods, right? And the biggest thing is nutrient-dense foods. We use that phrase a lot, right? So when we're talking whole and clean, we're talking more nutrients per calorie, right? That's one of the big things. Better energy, fewer cravings, stable blood sugar, etc. So, one of the biggest problems among many of modern processed foods is that it's often very high in calories, but low in nutrient density, right? So you can eat a large amount of packaged food and still not meet your daily requirements for vitamins, minerals, etc. Amino acids, healthy fats, fibers, all of those important things. And whole foods kind of flip that. So foods like eggs, meat, fish, vegetables, fruit, legumes, nuts, seeds, minimally processed grains, as we just were discussing, have a much higher nutrient density, meaning your body gets more usable nutrition with every bite. More efficient, I guess. And so when your body's truly nourished, your energy becomes more stable throughout the day, your blood sugar spikes and crashes decrease, cravings calm down, mood and mental clarity improve, and the body stops constantly searching for quick sources of fuel, right? We know that many chronic diseases today are heavily connected to low-grade inflammation and metabolic dysfunction from these foods, specifically these processed foods, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, cardiovascular disease, elevated cholesterol, obesity, hormone imbalance, infertility. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And ultra-processed foods promote that inflammation because they're high in refined sugars and and flours, low in fiber, and loaded with those additives, preservatives, artificial ingredients.
All to make it that hyper palatable, I can't stop eating it.
Can't stop eating it.
And in order for it to really do its job, which is sell more, it has to do two things. It has to be hyper palatable, and it also can't make you feel full, because if it makes you feel full, then you're going to stop eating. So both of those things, it doesn't satiate you and it's hyper palatable. That's the ingredients to the SAD diet, the standard American diet.
Sure, I know, the SAD diet. And when we're talking whole foods, they naturally contain things that our body needs to function at an optimal level. Antioxidants, like we were talking about with the CoQ10, phytonutrients, fiber, omega-3 fats, minerals that support cellular function, detoxification. And, many people are surprised when they are thinking they're eating clean, right? But many people are surprised to learn how many ingredients are hidden inside of foods, like artificial dyes, preservatives, emulsifiers, flavors, natural flavors. What is natural flavor? Oh, it's natural. Stabilizers, artificial sweeteners. That's a big one that a lot of people don't think about. So artificial sweeteners and the issues that they can cause. And then those industrial seed oils like we just mentioned. So what does whole actually mean? In its very simple form, it's really simple. Single ingredient foods, right? Foods that you're going to get, what do people say, on the outside of the grocery store versus the inside, right? Or the foods that you're going to find at your local farm or your farmers markets, things like that. Meats, eggs, vegetables, fruits, things like that are in it on its face whole foods, right? And then what does clean mean, right? Whole and clean. What does clean actually mean? Minimally processed with no weird chemicals, seed oils, added sugars. How was the food grown? How was the animal fed? chemical exposures, nutrient density, like I just mentioned, processing methods. So we have to think about the body's burden from unnecessary toxins in the foods that we're eating every day. There's lots of research that we could do a whole other podcast about pesticides and GMOs and herbicides, but we know that it can cause hormone disruptions, gut microbiome issues, fertility issues, metabolic issues, cancers. I mean, that's a whole other discussion, right? And so, trying to go back to the core of how did our ancestors eat? What was available to them? Sticking to those types of foods are, we know, the best decision for your family, for your health. So we're going to talk about some meal and food ideas, but, at its core, keeping it simple, shopping fruits and veggies on the outside of the store, meats, dairy is not inherently bad. We could do a whole other podcast about dairy, high quality dairy, butter, things like that. We are going to include some resources on local resources here in our Middle Tennessee area. There's a great website, picktennesseeproducts.org, that has lists of local farmers. They're open all day, every day. You don't have to wait till Saturday for your farmer's market. You can just drive to their farm. They'll be happy to see you and pick up fruits, veggies, what's growing locally, meats that are raised locally. So we'll include some resources there. But, you don't have to spend, it can get expensive. That's the other thing. Think about. You don't have to spend all your money at the farmer's market on Saturday. There's some other ways to keep it simple, not overcomplicate the foods that you're eating, the foods that you're feeding your family every day.
That's awesome. One of the things I've done, and actually it's wonderful to see my kids doing this now, reading labels. One of the things we always said was if you can't pronounce it, then most likely it's not good for you. So identifying at a minimum, if you're like, oh, I just have to get something quick and pre-made, if half the ingredients aren't in your kitchen or more, it's probably not really going to have the nutrients that you want it to have. So if at least half of it, and this is just for your snacks, those quick things, that would be the way we've kind of do it. And it's great for your kids to start realizing how much of the food truly isn't just food. It's mostly better living through more chemicals. And looking at all those chemicals, so I appreciate how you've kind of talked about that. Let's talk about where we shop.
Yeah, great.
So, my three go-to, actually, probably four go-tos is for the bulk of food, it's going to be one of the big boxes. So Sam's Club or Costco, depending on how good the annual deal was that year, which one we have to switch to. Oh yeah, by the way, you can save on gas if you still have to use gas. And then, so the place where we usually go for quick things is Aldi's. Excellent prices. So busy that the turnover and the volume there is usually quite good. And there's great things, especially their produce aisle. I really like their produce because they have a lot of good organics there. But they are the best prices now. For me, they beat out Walmart, they beat out Kroger's, et cetera. But how about you? Where are you doing your shopping?
That's a good question. I think my husband gives me a lot of flack because he's like, well, going to the grocery store is not as simple as saying I'm going to the grocery store because you're going to 4 different stores to get everything you need, right? I love Trader Joe's. You do have to be careful at Trader Joe's because I think they do a really good job of marketing a very healthy lifestyle. But again, please read all your labels.
Those frozen aisles. The center of that store is full of wonderful goodness with lots of better eating through chemicals.
Correct. So be, just like in any store, be careful there. Aldi, again, I agree. I love Aldi. Whole Foods, I enjoy Whole Foods. It can get extremely expensive, but I will say that Amazon, you get Amazon discount. And, I had to change my habits, right? Sitting down, making lists, sticking to budgets, things like that. We go to the farmer's market every Saturday. We're part of a CSA. So doing the math, it's is it a CSA, farm share? What does CSA stand for? I don't know, but it's a crop sharing. That's what it is. So we paid one annual fee, and each week we get to pick up a giant bag of beautiful vegetables
And it's always
from a local
I wonder
farmer.
what it's going to be this week.
Yeah, you never
Things
know.
that you've never thought you would ever cook.
Yes. And it's really fun. It's been fun to have to figure out what to do with all of these, especially in the winters, we were getting just bags and bags of greens that you've, likely never cooked with before. But, sitting down and doing the math, okay, how much money are we spending at the grocery store every week? How much fresh produce are we throwing away, right? Because I don't know about you, but I've definitely noticed the difference in the longevity of, let's say, a tomato I buy from the grocery store and a tomato I get from a local farmer, right? So how much am I throwing away? So that made sense for our family, budget-wise. And, we get to eat those nutrient-dense fruits and veggies that have recently come out of the dirt, right? They haven't been sitting on a truck and shipped across the country. So they're holding on to more of those nutrients than some of the fruits and veggies in the grocery store. And then we did a meat share. So a very similar idea to a CSA, but it's for beef. So we pick that up monthly. And that works for us. We don't have room to
store
a whole cow, but we do a beef share. So we pick it up every first Saturday of the month from a local farmer. And that works really well for our family too. And budget-wise, it also is cheaper than if we were to buy beef or chicken or, whatever from the conventional grocery store.
I tell you that once you've tried the grass-fed, grass-raised, whole natural beef, it is no way you will ever go back. It is absolutely amazing.
Just looking at them side by side,
yes.
right? The ground beef you pick up from the grocery store, it's a little bit gray,
a little spongy.
Yeah. And you're like, why is this grass-fed ground beef beautiful and bright red?
And the taste is so amazing. And
uncomparable, yeah.
All right. Well, let's leave everyone with some real practical things that they can take home. I've got a couple of recipes I'll suggest out there. One of the most common snack foods for even quote unquote the healthy folk are the protein bars and the protein shakes. And again, just look at the ingredients.
Yeah.
And if you can find that
long
exactly the long list of chemistries that are in those, you'll see that honestly, those aren't the best way to start. So the protein bars I would recommend, very easy. Get out your pen and paper. Here's your recipe. It's a half a cup of dates. Make sure you take the pits out. Half a cup of, I mix almonds and walnuts, and I'm going to get more into walnuts in a second. They're the wonder nut for you. Then a half a cup of any naked protein. There's either whey protein, naked whey, and naked pea protein. So if you have any milk allergies, you can use the naked pea protein. And it has all of one ingredient. So it's really good protein powder. A tablespoon of honey, a tablespoon of cocoa, and then salt it to taste. Put that in a blender, blend it up, put it on a parchment lined sheet. And all together, that's 1,400 calories, but break that up into 6, 8, or 10 bars. And that's what you take to your going on your way to work or your kid's soccer game, etc. So much healthier. Takes about 10 minutes to make. Stick it in the fridge at night, come back, and now you can just cut it up. That's wonderful. Each bar, if you did it by 8, it's about 250 calories, about 25 grams of protein, really good and tasty.
Yeah, it's good. I have a recipe similar. Yeah. It's usually my go-to for postpartum moms too. Great ingredients for breast milk production. But I don't know if you've ever been to Southall, and I'm sure local Tennesseans will know. It's just this beautiful property in Franklin, but they have the very similar little bites that they make in-house. So it was my mission to recreate them. And I feel like I did pretty good. But I always mix it up. Sometimes I add chia seeds for fiber or hemp seeds, different nuts.
Peanut butter powder.
Yeah, you can really have fun with it. Add things that your kids like. Dried fruit is great. I love dried cherries. They are packed with antioxidants. It's a good way to get your kids interested in eating something like that too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
One of my favorite go-to bulk meals, I'm a big man, have always been a big man all my life, and I like volume. And what I do is very easy. Get a steel bowl, open up a can of tuna or a can of chicken. First, I put a teaspoon of chia seeds and a teaspoon of psyllium powder. I found what to do with it.
Okay,
I cannot
great.
stand putting that in water.
Yeah, we're not drinking that. Yeah.
So I put those two at the bottom of the bowl. Then I just open up the can of tuna or the can of chicken, and I leave the water with the flavor in it. And those soak up in the chia seeds and the psyllium powder and make your fiber natural in there. Then I add 2 cups of coleslaw, raw coleslaw. I'm not a big fan of the salads because it goes bad so quickly unless you get it at a farmer's market and you keep it whole and you put so I get a lot of raw coleslaw, and that gives you the crunch, the texture. And then I always
saves better too. It saves better meal prep wise.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then I add cottage cheese, and there's some that don't like the texture of cottage cheese. Just use a hand blender and it comes out like sour cream or yogurt, like Greek yogurt, or you can even use Greek yogurt in it. And then I always add nuts, both for the protein, a little bit of the fat and the flavor, and then do mostly vinegar with a little bit, maybe 2 tablespoons of a light balsamic oil on top of it. And that's a huge bowl that's less than 700 calories. And then I have it with nori sheets. So, that the nori sheets, which are full of different vitamins that we have, but you just eat it like a little taco and you sit there and enjoy it. And it's actually wonderful, and it's very filling.
Man, I am hungry. My stomach is growling. Something that I like to do, because, I'm a busy working mom, like I'm sure a lot of people listening are. And I also have a lot of friends who are like, I just don't want to do the CSA because I don't know what to do with all of those vegetables I get. I've never seen some of those. What do I do with I don't know, you name it. My favorite thing to do is sheet pan, get a big sheet pan. I love, like I said, we have the beef share, so we have a lot of ground beef. So I'll do like meatballs. You just make meatballs, whatever flavor you want. And I'll just pick a couple of those vegetables from the bag, chop everything up, put everything on a sheet pan, olive oil. Usually I do some kind of Mediterranean, olive oil, balsamic vinegar, oregano, toss it all together, put it in the oven. In 40 minutes, you have delicious roasted veggies with high protein. You can add, sometimes we make like a tahini sauce for the top, or we'll add feta cheese, something to it. But that's one of our go-tos in our house. And you can make it different every night, or you can make it the same every night. It's delicious either way. And that's a great way to use kind of like a bulk meal, similar. Use all of those fruits or veggies that you don't necessarily know how to use. So that's a go-to in our house.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Ashlynn, I think we've covered enough for today. I hope that left everyone with something that they can take home and perhaps even feed their family with. So we'll look to hear or have you all back for episode 43-ish coming up next.
Ish, we hope. 43, probably.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. To learn more, you can visit our website at fiathealth.org. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. This helps make the podcast easier to find. Lastly, if you'd like to reach out, ask a question, or suggest a topic for a future show, send us an email at media@fiathealth.org. God bless.